I'm Anna. Welcome to episode 8 of the First Synth series here on our channel. You know, our first encounter with the synthesizer can be a memorable experience that leaves a lasting impression on us, whether that first encounter was through hearing, seeing, or playing a synthesizer. Today we are proud to feature 4 awesome YouTube creators who will share their first synth stories. Please follow the links below to visit their channels. And as always, thanks for spending time with us. Let's go!
Hi Matthew, thanks for the opportunity to do this video to talk about my first synth, and I'm interested to hear what other people say about their first synth. So mine was a Yamaha DX100, the little FM synth from the 1980s. So the reason why I got mine was my grandfather was an organist, and he played a Hammond organ, and then later the Yamaha Electones. And whenever we were around the house, I used to jump, put headphones on and try and recreate the pop songs of the time, Pet Shop Boys or whatever, on these Yamaha Electones. And then they got me a little PSR Porter Studio keyboard for Christmas one year, and I used to play that. I really enjoyed that, but I wanted a proper synth, not a home keyboard. So I managed to persuade them one year, I think it was 86, to get me the DX100, and I remember driving up to the shop so excited to pick up this thing. And I chose the DX100, which incidentally I have here. So this is the DX100, so this is the portable cut down version of the DX7, 4 operators instead of the DX7's 6 operators. And I managed to persuade because they were cheap. The DX7 was thousands, the DX100 was about £300, something like that at the time. So I managed to get it for Christmas, and I was so excited because I'd seen them all playing on Top of Pops and everything else. All the weekly UK chart show. I've seen all the artists play on there, and Go West keyboard players got a DX7, that's what I want, but of course couldn't get one. And I didn't know they were miming, but I did manage to get the DX100, so I was so excited with that. And I've kept it all these years. It's been in lofts at various times, sometimes out, sometimes in the loft, but for the last 10 years it's been out. I've replaced the battery in it, looked after it. I've still got the original demo tapes. In fact, my grandfather sent for a demo cassette from Yamaha UK. It was in one of the keyboard magazines, and I got that, and I remember listening to it over and over and over again, thinking what I'll be able to do with this DX100. Of course, in reality it was a bit different. There's no effects, no sequence, and no drums. So I paired it up with my ZX Spectrum, and yeah, I had a lot of fun with the little DX100. And then it sort of was never that valuable, so it kind of just got carried around with me where I was. But like I said, recently, in the last few years, I've had it out all the time. I don't use it all the time now. That want for a DX7 never went away, so in the end I bought a TX7 because I didn't have the space for a DX7, so I've got the sound module of it. So I don't use the DX100 that much, but it has got some really good sounds on it, like solid bass, and there's some nice bell type piano sounds on there which I do use as well. In fact, I've got a bit more used to it recently. Paired it up with the key stage to put and change the sounds to make them velocity sensitive. In fact, I've still got the tape with the velocity sensitive patches. I haven't tried it yet, but so you can get a bit more responsive in it. And of course, the other thing it's got as well is the guitar strap, so you can use it as a guitar. I must admit, I don't do that very often, but it's kind of fun to do. And it's got MIDI in and out as well. I actually got a little portable, a little wireless MIDI adapter I use with it as well. So it's good fun. It's an interesting synth. I keep it for sentimental reasons, and I still love the sound of it, and I like the old technology as well. So it's a definite keeper for me. And it was a great starter synth, affordable synth at that time, which got me started playing with music, and I've still got the fascination with music synthesis, and I'm now using things like the Op6, the Korg Op6 with FM synthesis. So really appreciate you giving me the opportunity to talk about the DX100, why I kept it and why I liked it. I had to thank my grandfather for a love of music, particularly keyboard music, and so here it is, the DX100, my first synth.
Hello, my name is Samuel Davis. I'm a composer, content creator, and co-owner of a production company. I run the channel A Joe Blog Composer on YouTube, where I talk a lot about virtual instruments, do walkthroughs, reviews, and do a whole series on free samples called Free Sample of the Week. But Matthew has invited me today to talk about my first synthesizer, and in all honesty, my first and only synthesizer. It's the Moog Grandmother. You can see it here in the background. Sadly, it's in a little bit of disrepair, and I need to send it off to be fixed, but me and this synth have a lovely little history. We got together all the way back during my degree at Bangor University. I did a degree in music and later on specialised in music composition, specifically acousmatic music or music concrete, electric acoustic music. And throughout my degree, I'd go around with a H6 and just record random sounds, everything from smashed glass to water, birds, you name it, and put together spatial audio pieces. It's quite a niche genre, but very cool. If you ever have the opportunity to go and see an acousmatic concert, I'd highly recommend it, just to experience it, because it is a really cool and unique genre. Anyway, later on in my course, I really wanted to get into the synthesis and the electrical circuitry and, well, yeah, synthesis part of electric acoustic music. If you look into the history of synthesizers, you'll find that electric acoustic music and music concrete have a very important part to play when it comes to founding these sorts of instruments. And so I wanted to dive into that section. And I'm a very hands-on sort of person when it comes to learning. It's how I learned to do camera work, it's how I learned to compose, how to do production, recording, all that sort of thing was just jumping into the studio, twiddling with different knobs and seeing what happens. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't, mistakes happen, and sometimes you have happy accidents as well. And so I wanted to get into like physical synthesizers, the knobs, the twisting, turning, all that sort of thing. I tried learning with virtual instruments, but they're quite complicated and I didn't really know where to start. And it was at the end of a tax year and I got a tax rebate, and so I had a little extra money lying around and I did my research. I wanted one synthesizer that did it all. I wanted some analog, something I couldn't get with or do with virtual instruments. And what I loved about the Moog Grandmother is it has a spring reverb. I love the colors. I love how simply it is laid out. It's a semi-modular synthesizer, so it works out of the box, or you can plug and play and mess around with where everything is on it. And overall, just a beautiful synthesizer that sits really nicely on my desk, actually. And so when it came, I just plugged it in and went ham and messed around, spent hours just twiddling and experimenting and working out how this instrument worked. And throughout that process, I recorded all those samples and sounds and got some really happy accidents, in all honesty. And I put those all together into an acousmatic piece, which I submitted on my degree and got some really good marks for. But it's a really fun synthesizer. And in all honesty, I miss it. It has been in disrepair for a couple months now and I keep meaning to send it off, but I've been very busy and I want to get back into it, especially with compositions when you're trying to work out a bass. Mostly I use this for basses, in all honesty, but it works perfect for leads. It just has that nice grit that I can't seem to find with virtual instruments. Would I get another synthesizer? I've thought about it, especially getting a poly synthesizer or a digital synthesizer, but I found, especially nowadays with virtual instruments, you can get some really beautiful ones, and I'm very happy with my Moog Grandmother. Plus, I don't feel I have the space. The studio, as much as it might look nice on the screen, it is cram-packed with shelves and gear, and I don't have room for another one, sadly. I do have my little keyboard underneath here as well, but I'm pretty happy with my virtual instruments and my Moog Grandmother. It scratches that itch for me. Would I recommend it to anybody else? Of course I would. Moogs are beautiful synthesizers, and if you want to get into synthesis, I definitely recommend some of their smaller ones as well. It's a really solid brand. But I think I'll leave it there. That's the story behind my first synthesizer. Thank you again, Matthew, for having me on the show.
Hey, Matt. Thank you so much for having me on your channel and inviting me to be part of this series. That was a really great invitation to get, and so I'm happy to be here. My name is Rob, but I do synthesizer music under the name Domi Fotaro. On my channel, you can see modular gear reviews, you can see modular jams, I do some Electron stuff, but today we are talking about my first synthesizer, which I'm very excited to talk about, and that is the Arturia Micro Brute. And this little analog synthesizer, I obviously still have it. It's right here. I don't use it very much anymore, but I always keep it in the back of my mind because this thing can pitch hit where these sometimes can't. I haven't needed to use it. I always like knowing that it's there. I got this about 13-ish years ago. I'd have to look back, but I think it was around there. It might have even been a little longer. And how I got this was I actually had a Moog ring modulator, a Moger-Foger ring modulator that I had had for several years at that point. That had a carrier oscillator signal that you could hear and manipulate, as well as an LFO. And I was using that for guitar. I was doing some, with the help of some reverb and delay, I was doing some sort of ambient music, more experimental sounds. And having the ring modulator, the more I learned about it, it kind of piqued my interest in synthesis, but that wasn't a proper synthesizer. So that led me to researching synthesizers, and I landed on this one. I think that this is an excellent synthesizer to learn the principles of synthesis. Everything's clearly laid out. I think almost everything, with the exception of the sequencer, is knob per function. But one of the other things that this synthesizer also introduced me to was the concept of CV. If you see here, it has this little mod matrix at the top, and this has an LFO, it has envelope, pitch, it does have pitch, pulse width modulation, the filter, and then it can control some of the wave shaping controls. On the back, it has pitch out, and gate in. So I could even take a pitch out from here and start playing one of my oscillators in Eurorack. So super versatile. This is like a little synth that you always sort of, you need something like this in your back pocket. I think every studio needs to have something like this that you can kind of think back and go, oh, you know what, I could use that. This is that for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some little sound samples here, and we'll close it out. Hey, new location. Sorry, the light is way better down here. Anyway, Arturia microbrew. Pretty cool, right? So I thought it sounded cool. What do you think? Yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with this. If you're learning to do synthesis, this is everything you need right here. This is it. This does everything. I really don't think you could go wrong with it. It was a great learning tool for me. I think it would be a great learning tool for anyone who can get their hands on this. It's a great first synth. It sounds amazing for what it is and for the price point. I mean, this thing has so much going for it. That's the Arturia microbrew. It was my first synth. Matt, thank you again so much for having me on the channel. Let's do something again. This was cool. Anyway, hope to see all of you again later. Bye.
How you doing? This is JLTBK from JLTBK Productions. You can follow me at JLTBK on Instagram or JLTBK5420 on YouTube. Today I just wanted to talk to you about, what was my first synth and what made me get into synthesis. My music journey started when I was in the 5th grade. A part of me getting into music was just basically to have something to do after school. At the elementary school that I went to, we had a band, and it was just something cool to do after you get out of school, because I really didn't want to go home and just sit there and do homework. So the after school program was a music program where it was a group of individuals in my age group, ranging anywhere from the 2nd grade all the way up to the 6th grade, and we had drums in there where it was the bass drum, snare drum, all of the drums, and it was pretty cool. I started off with the bass drum, and I stayed there for about a year. And as I grew up, I noticed that music for me was something to do for pastime and to stay out of trouble. So fast forward into my teenage years and, doing things that I probably wasn't supposed to, I noticed that I gravitated towards, doing music when, there wasn't really anything else to do. I know I would go over to my brother's house, and at the time he was into music, and he had a keyboard, which was one of the popular keyboards back then, was a Korg Triton, and I would go over there and doodle around with it, and I noticed that I really liked that part, just going in there and creating something. Not only was my brother creating, I also had a friend around the corner who had the other keyboard, a Motif, and he had a mixing board over there, and I would doodle around there, and I always liked it to gravitate, to their houses when I wasn't doing anything. So when I got my own money together and I decided I wanted to be a part of the music a little more seriously, I set my sights on a MPC, and I really just didn't have the money for it. So I ended up grabbing a groove box. It was the MC909, and that groove box was also a synthesizer. So that was my first synthesizer. That was my first, journey into synthesis. And at that time, I really wasn't interested in the synthesizer part of it. I was more interested in getting a machine that was sequenced, that already had sounds baked into it. Now, when purchasing that groove box, I really didn't utilize it for synthesis capabilities. I would get a sound, and if I needed to tweak it, I would tweak it with the, ADSR to get it to the sound that I want to, but I never really got into the sound design part of it. And, I bought that box about 20 years ago, and I loved it. I used it for everything. I had a couple of artists that I was working with. We would compose beats on it, sample into it. So I was really just kind of using it for the baked in sounds that was in it, the presets, and I was also using it for sampling. And, I got a lot of miles out of it. Yes, I do have it until this day. I have it, on a shelf over here. And I don't think I'll ever part ways with it. It just has that sentimental value for me, where, I probably get this thing serviced and get it back into working condition. You know, since I've had it, you know, I've replaced the pads twice. I replaced the motherboard, and that's all I can think of at the moment. But you know, I've had it for some time. I expanded it, put an SRX chip in it, got 2 of those. I put more RAM inside of it. The thing is just fully spec'd out, and I enjoyed it when I bought it, and I still have it until this day. And I actually even plugged it in a couple of months ago and started tinkering around with it, and you know, I still love that unit until this day. Now that, you know, I'm a little bit older and in my music journey, now I'm starting to have more of an appreciation for synthesis. When I did purchase that box, you know, I wasn't really interested in the synthesizer part of it. So that may have been my first synthesizer. But when I got back into synthesis, I ended up purchasing, you know, these synthesizers here on my left. And I think I'm kind of addicted. So purchased the Prophet Rev 2 because, you know, it was my intention to get a synthesizer that I was able to kind of create my own patches from scratch. And without having a understanding of how synthesizers work, I kind of felt like that it was a little too overwhelming, and I just used it for the presets. So I liked the sound of it, so I went on ahead and I wanted to kind of dumb it down to make it a little more easier for me to program these synthesizers. And I went and got the Prophet 6. Love that sound. Started making patches on it, and that's when, you know, that's when bug bit me. And I went on ahead and grabbed the Prophet 10, and this thing is just oozes with vintage sound, and I'm loving it. I'm loving the knob per function. I'm loving that real lo-fi sound to it. And you know, that's where I am with my synthesis journey. I even have a Moog Sub 25 that I'm really loving for, you know, creating leads. And if it wasn't for that first, you know, synthesizer, the MC909, I probably wouldn't even be where I am today when it comes to music production. You know, just having those physical knobs in front of me. And don't get me wrong, when I did get the MC909, even though I didn't use it to, you know, for synthesis capabilities, I did, you know, tinker with the knobs and change some parameters and made sound different with it. So kind of opened that door for me that, hey, I can change these sounds and make them unique. And that's where I got to, you know, getting into these hardware synths. You know, now between the time of 20 years ago and now, yeah, I've fooled with a lot of VSTs and know that, hey, you know, turning this dial here may change it to sound like this, but nothing beats, for me, you know, having the physical unit in front of you and actually turning these knobs and seeing how that sound just changes, and turning this knob, how it manipulates the way that the sound comes out of these units. But I really just appreciate, you know, where I came from. Just want to thank Matthew for having me on his channel and considering me to be a part of his synthesizer, his First Synth series, and thanks for tuning in. It's JLTBK. I'm out.